What's up, peers, and welcome to the World Crypto Network, here for a new show of Read Rothbard and Use Bitcoin. And today we have a really a good treat for you because I'm joined by Michael, the Bitcoin Rabbi. How are you doing? What's up?
Hey, thank you. I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on.
Well, thank you for making time in your day. And you have, or we've been chatting here on Twitter here and there, and you have a couple really nice presentations that tie the ideas and the religion of Judaism into the Bitcoin construct, and where you can draw here the parallels. And we spoke earlier a bit about how this is such an edge effect, right? Where the quote unquote Bitcoin culture rubs against the Judaism culture, and here in the overlap. We always find some really cool, interesting things happening. And so you have here a cool 45-minute presentation about Bitcoin and Judaism and where you see this connection. So Michael, could you maybe summarize on like a introduction on where you see this link?
Okay, so that was a speech that I gave to a Jewish group at a university near me just a couple weeks ago. And I've been into Bitcoin for about 2 years now, and I'm also an Orthodox rabbi. And so I've always liked connecting things, and I see a lot of similarities in like the culture and the economics and philosophy. And so I want to look at things from both sides, kind of like where Judaism can apply and kind of give a perspective on Bitcoin, and also where Bitcoin can give a perspective on aspects of Judaism. So I made that into a presentation. I go at things in two different ways, depending who I'm talking to. Either I'm teaching Jewish people about Bitcoin, or I'm teaching Bitcoiners about Judaism. So that was a presentation to Jewish students. So I do a whole explanation of the history of Bitcoin, the history of money, how we got to the money system that we're in now, how we go from precious metals to paper money and fiat, and then how Bitcoin solves the problems of fiat. And then I ask the question, which is promptly put, is it kosher? And basically say, people, there's all the FUD of all the terrible things about Bitcoin. So I assume that's what people come into it. If they don't know anything, that's their first reaction, is like, well, I've heard all these terrible things. So I kind of try to go one by one and dismiss all of those ideas. And then the concept is in Judaism, at least, is everything is a tool. And tools can be used for good or for bad. And Bitcoin is an excellent tool because it's excellent money. And it can be just like you would use your money. If you're a good person, you'll use it for good. Bitcoin can hopefully be used, the majority of it, for good purposes. So that's kind of the conclusion, is that Bitcoin is kosher, it's interesting, and it's very useful.
Oh, yeah, great. And I think that really does apply to Bitcoin, right? Especially the aspect that it is a tool. And I would say it's a very beautiful tool, right? A piece of software, a protocol, speech that can be used in a way to, well, solve all the issues that money is solving. And of course, on technical side, the double spending, but also more generally, the aspect of a store of value, medium of exchange, and unit of account. These are very important economical tool that entrepreneurs need in order to allocate their resources to efficient good, or to efficient problems, and so that they remove problems in the future that are not as delightful as they could be. And so that is where Bitcoin as a tool really does come in, right? But could
Yeah.
you maybe elaborate a bit more on the aspect of Bitcoin being kosher and what that exactly means?
So I think that the idea of like Bitcoin as a people being free and people being able to interact with each other, in my view, from my studies of the Talmud and Jewish law, there are a lot of free market aspects in Jewish law, there's also a lot of personal responsibility. Personal responsibility is a key component, as well as like sharing, helping each other. And that's my experience of being in the community, is everybody is kind of like working. There's this dichotomy of the individual and their own role, like the individual node runner, and you are in control and sovereign over your node and your UTXOs, but everybody is in consensus and everybody's working together, and that is what that system is what makes everything work. So in Judaism, it's the same way. Like there's each individual has their responsibilities and their personal and their moral goals in life, but we also are a community, either a Jewish community or a mankind community. And when we work together, we make things better, and that's done, with our money and with our technology and all of those things. And the more that the easier it is for us to cooperate together and make things, the better it's going to be, and the better it's going to develop for everyone.
Oh yeah, great points. And this combination of both individualism, right, that you do run your own full node and that you have full control over which monetary rules you choose, that is a really novel and important aspect. However, it's not a isolated individual. We are dealing here with several individuals interacting and interchanging goods and services, and of course communication as well. And so with Bitcoin, we do eventually reach this Schelling point of sound money, the Nakamoto consensus. And it's quite beautifully how this is both a technological, kind of like a math proven system, where the chain with the most accumulated proof of work just culminates to be the one true history. But then also the consensus layer, that this Bitcoin consensus is much larger than just the code base. So do you see here a difference between these two types of consensus?
I mean, yes. I would say that, I mean, there are a lot of overlaps. So I actually put out a tweet that you might have scrolled by there, in how Judaism is like, it actually encourages each individual to run a full node. So there we go. So there are a lot of aspects. So in some way, I mean, people do have the right to run whichever software, quote unquote, in Judaism that they want. But there is the software, the original, that, at least from in the Jewish perspective, we have the Torah. The Torah was written 3,500 years ago, and so everybody is kind of on that consensus. There are soft forks, there are hard forks. Each person can, there are different religions. Every person's free to do that. But there are different consensus networks around each one of those forks.
Oh, it looks like we've dropped Michael here. But it is quite interesting, right? And I've written here my bachelor, or part of my bachelor thesis, on anarchy in money, that we have this extreme rugged individualism in the Bitcoin network layer, that when you are running your own full node, you choose whichever rule set you want to follow. And no one can force you to run whatever. I mean, we saw that with, for example, scams like Roger Ver, who then tried to convince you on using a different set of rules, right? Proposed to change to Bitcoin Cash or Bcash consensus rules. But that broke the social consensus and, well, also the technical consensus of Bitcoin. And thus, when you were running your own full node, you were not affected at all by that, because you still retain your own individual true rule set. And that cannot be coerced away from you. So in that sense, it's a very individualistic and very anarchistic system without coercive aggression. So that is, quite interesting points. And Michael, it seems like you're back.
Yes.
So please finish up the point that you just.
I mean, you kept the ball rolling. I think I got my main point back. I heard what you were saying, so I think we are. I don't remember exactly what sentence I was on, but I think we covered that topic.
Okay, yes, I agreed. But you also point out, or you provide a quote in this tweet that says that you need to know the entire Torah, and also in the sense that you need to know the rules that you live by, and that is of course also true in a, let's say, in here in the case of the Torah, in a mystic, in a spiritual sense, that you need to have your moral guidelines and ethical compass guiding you, and you need to know and be knowledgeable about that. But it also applies in the case of Bitcoin to, of course, running your own full node and verifying and not trusting others. So could you maybe go a bit more here into these different types of belief structures?
Yeah, well, so I'll just say that there's another comparison that we do have in Judaism. There are rabbis. There are different levels of rabbis. I'm studied as a rabbi, but I'm not a pulpit rabbi. I'm a teacher in a school, but I'm trained as a rabbi. But we have like grand rabbis who are in each generation. You have different questions of where Jewish law falls out, and they are kind of will discuss amongst themselves, and sometimes they'll agree and sometimes they'll disagree, but kind of major issues are not decided by every single person. They are that. So in my analogy there, they would serve as like the minors. The grand rabbis of each generation take the previous consensus from the consensus state from the last generation, like the last block, and then they'll process what is new and what has changed, and then the community takes that and decides which kind of path to take. And there can be soft forks and there can be hard forks, and that's where you have there are different customs in Judaism, like there are European Jews, and there are there's a variety of different ways. So that's my analogy, and in that way everybody can kind of take their own path, yet they're still in greater consensus with each other.
Oh yeah, very interesting, especially when you apply it on the global level, right, with different schools of Judaism
Yeah.
and traditions. Oh, very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there are
And
many different paths that are all in global consensus with each other, even though there are some soft forks, quote unquote, that go off in different ways, even in minor aspects of life or even major aspects of life. But because we're all following the same basic rules, we still can converge.
very interesting. Yeah, and it might be in the sense that it is different reference or different software implementations of Bitcoin and
Yeah.
Nakamoto consensus rules. So, for
Yeah.
example, Bitcoin Core being the reference implementation, and so to say the main religion or main part in the religion. But
Yeah.
then, for example, LibBitcoin or Bitcoin D or other versions, BTCD, that eventually should do the same thing. They should also converge to the same blockchain head, to the same consensus,
Mhm.
but they are different ways of getting there. Or would you that, or yeah? So do you think that will be the accurate description here?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm not exactly 100% sure on how on the technical aspects of how those different implementations come to consensus even though they're written in different code languages, and that I don't know exactly how it works from a technical standpoint, but at least for a simple analogy, I think that's kind of pretty good.
Okay, awesome. And so what you also brought up here in your great talk about Bitcoin and Judaism was a lot about the economic theory of Bitcoin. And I was quite surprised to find this much economical tradition here in the Judaism ethos. So could you please go a bit more into why you focused on economics?
I mean, I think it's so simple. To me, the concept, I mean, in Judaism, because the majority of Jewish texts, Judaism as a religion is about over 3,000 years old, which for the majority of that 3,000 years, I mean, 90% of it, money was gold and silver. That was plain, that there wasn't even a discussion about what was money. So that's why people have asked me to find in Jewish texts, what does Judaism say about fiat currency, and what does it say about fractional reserve banking? And there's not a whole lot, because it didn't exist in the times of the Torah or the times of the Talmud or the time, any of the biblical temple era times in Israel. So there's not that much. So when you come from the starting point that money is gold and silver, you obviously are you logically decide, well, what is good about those monies? You come to those things. Now, people today, because they're using fiat, they don't think about that. They're not brought up to think, why is something valuable? Why are we using money at all? And I'll tell you, I think that I became, like a libertarian or Austrian at a very young age. My father told me, or my grandfather rather, he said he would, when he was a kid, he would go to a movie, and it would cost for 2 tickets 5 cents. So his mother would send him 2 cents and tell him to stand outside of the theater, find a rich kid who had 3 cents, and they could go in together. So when I heard that story as a little kid, and I knew that going to the movie cost $8, not 5 cents, I knew there was something wrong about the system that we were using. So for me, it was just common sense that once I understood, you pass by Bitcoin the first couple times, at least for me, years even, and didn't notice it. And then once it clicked that, oh, this is what we were looking for, this is the hard money. It just seemed to fit right in, both with like what I personally thought as far as economics, as well as what I think that Judaism would find to be good money. Money is a very important thing as far as that it's what you value. It's your life. It actually is. In many times, it's referenced that your money is because you just practically you eat. You have money and you can buy food and you can buy water and that you buy your shelter. Your money is your life, so it's treated very importantly. And since it's so important, it's worth having a second look at what should that money be. Now, Judaism allows for using lesser forms of money, but I think that if you have the ability, which we do now have, to use a better form, it's incumbent upon you to do so.
Oh, yeah, very interesting, right? And the aspect that Bitcoin brings choice into the game, that it's now your responsibility of which currency you run, and no one can stop you which exact implementation you're using. So that is very powerful, and especially in light that what we are using right now is a evil currency. So what is the Judaism view on fiat-based and debt-based currencies?
So as I kind of mentioned, I have not been able to find. Actually, I'll tell you, there was questions in early on when debt documents like debt certificates or money, maybe like in the 1600s, because sometimes when you do a transaction actually matters in Jewish law. There are certain things, like when you get married, there's a financial transaction which must conform to Jewish law. It's now done with gold. It's actually, there are certain things that Jewish law requires be done or prefers be done with actual pieces of metal. So when a firstborn child is born, you actually, it's called redeeming the firstborn. It's somewhat of a ceremonial process that we give a certain amount of gold, like we donate a certain amount of, not gold, silver. Another thing is when you get married, you give we use a ring. Now, when you get married, you give a ring, but it's actually made out of gold or silver because it has value. So the question when debt instruments or documents of debt were first introduced, it was when you give that, are you actually doing a transaction? Is that considered a transaction in Judaism? And a lot of rabbis thought that it wasn't. Because the piece of paper only represented the debt. It wasn't actually money itself. Now the system of fiat we have, because it's become so pervasive, and when you hold a bill of legal tender, you actually can directly trade that with any. It's commonly accepted that has value, even though it's just made up value. But because the society as a whole has accepted it as value, and you can use it to purchase things. So according to Jewish law, it is a money, but if it's constantly losing value, it's maybe not smart money. So like I said, Judaism allows wherever you are, because the Jewish people have been we live in countries all over the world. So wherever you are, you're allowed to use whatever money and whatever technologies are around you. So if you live in a country or you're forced to use money, which is not so hard, you're allowed to. it's nice to be able to choose. This has always been a problem, because sometimes Jews lived in countries and then they had to escape, or they were kicked out, or all kinds of terrible things, and then they were stuck. So it hasn't been so good for lots of people, and not just Jewish people, but lots of people throughout history. So again, I think that if you can hold on to something that is really solid, it's incumbent to at least get involved with it somewhat.
Yeah, very interesting. And so right now with the Bitcoin reading group that Justin Moon started, and with great peers there learning and just reading Bitcoin books together, we are currently reading The Ethics of Money Production by Jörg Guido Hülsmann, a great book talking about the economics of money, and especially the history and how Christian philosophers and scientists and economists have viewed money and the importance of it. And here he points out that the main, let's say, Christian argument for a sound currency is that it protects property rights. It protects the right to own your currency, and that you can control what to do with it. And that includes that it is censorship resistant, of course, so that you can use it wherever, whenever, for whatever. It's yours. And also the aspect that it's uninflatable, that it cannot be increased in the money supply, as that takes away the purchasing power from those that hodl the currency to those that produce the currency. And here again comes in the ethics of money production, very much based on natural law and property rights. So do you think that Judaism has a similar focus on do not steal as a high dictum? In this sense?
Well, so I mean, we obviously, the do not steal is right up there in the 10 Commandments. So it is, of course, at the core. But the commandments are really on the individual, and more so. Now, in Judaism, there is as I've said, Judaism, I would say, is not an anarchist system. There are many places in Jewish texts that talk about the need to have somewhat of some amount of government, but also places that talk about the overreaches of government. So the overreaches of government for most of history was related to taxing. So it wasn't about printing extra money. That's only been happening for the past 100 years. So as far as classical Jewish texts, it doesn't address, or I haven't been able to find places that address that so much. But the idea that governments do overtax as a rule and take unnecessarily from their citizens as kind of a rule is well documented. So you may be able to extend that and say, well, fiat is just a way of extending that and making taxes in a more subversive way.
Okay, very interesting. So you also speak here in your thread about the importance in the Jewish tradition of donating money and gifting to others. And you point out here specifically, and there was a little YouTube video or a Twitter video that you did about this specifically. Oh no, he dropped off just when I was about to ask this compelling question. But basically the concept that he describes here is that you shall gift or donate a half of a shekel. And a shekel is basically the old silver coin that was used here in Judaism or in the areas here in the Middle East. And a half shekel was then basically half of such a coin. And it was then here gifted to whom exactly, Michael? That will be kind of the first question.
Hi, so I'm back. I missed just you for about 10 seconds there. Could you just point which you were talking about the half coin charity? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, exactly.
That's a different thing. That's actually referring to building of the tabernacle, which was the predecessor for the temple. So that specific thing was not so much of a charity as a communal works project. You could consider, but charity is extremely important. It's considered actually in Judaism. It's called the word for a commandment or a good deed in Judaism is called mitzvah. Maybe you've heard that word before. And charity is called the mitzvah, quote unquote, the mitzvah. It's that everybody has a responsibility to take care of each other. And you could say to at least to some people, or probably a lot of people in government, that they think by what they're doing is helping people, that they think that they are able to make the world better by taxing and inflating money. At least a lot of them are. But the idea is that we have, in Judaism, the emphasis is that we as individuals have a human requirement morally to care for our brothers and care for all people that are in need. So it is, and I think that that's really the solution. If we, if we're going to not have our money taken away from us in various forms, then we have to. And it can be done not just in a pure charity of giving to people on the street, but of giving loans and helping each other and teaching each other in all different kinds of ways. But the idea that your goal on this planet is to help other people and make the world better, you're not here just for your own pleasure, your own self, is absolutely the core principle, which is why the thou shalt not kill and thou shalt not steal and all of these things are the basis, the tops of the commandments.
Yeah, very interesting, right? And the art of giving gifts is a sacrifice, right? You give up something of your own that you could enjoy, and then that can be, of course, any consumption good, or it can be your time or attention, and it can, of course, be money. Right. But regardless of what you gift, it is something that you then no longer have. It's a scarce good, and you give away the property. And this sacrifice is, right, first, it has to come from the heart. It has to be done voluntarily. And then when it is that, it is mutually beneficial. In the sense that because we help our others, because we help our peers and we raise our peers, they can then later sacrifice stuff for us. Right, so it's a sharing relationship where
besides that, it's not just that, but I think that you actually, when you give, you become a better person. You become a greater person yourself. Besides, if that person can give you anything back or not, but it works both ways. They become better, and the whole society becomes better. But you actually just become a better person because you become a more giving person.
Oh yeah, great aspect. That giving in and of itself is a virtue that should be strived for, and then what follows is secondary, and I would agree very much so.
And I see that so much in the Bitcoin community, and both in knowledge and time, and and charity. And this, I think that it is. I think you'll find this virtue in libertarian, free market and free-minded thinking people, that they realize they don't want the responsibility of helping people to be left to the state. They want, but there are going to be people that in times need either education or, so many people have spent so much time, educating me and pointing me in the right direction. That's what I've found in this community. I've really liked it, the positivity.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that is very much also with open source development of the software, right?
Yeah.
And pretty much all of these peers are self-funded volunteers who just dedicate and sacrifice their time and attention in order to write this beautiful piece of software. So it's very complex. It requires a lot of division of labor and specialized skills. And of course, this means then that we have to give something back, right? And help others who are already volunteering and sacrificing their times. And that's why we always say, right, it doesn't matter what you do in Bitcoin, but do something. If you can write software, well, it would be great if you can dedicate a bit of your time to writing the software, testing it, or if you can write documentation and explain stuff, perfect, do that. If you can do podcasts or videos or whatever, yeah, for sure. Or if you organize local meetups and do local teaching. It doesn't really matter too much what you do, because anything that you can do is part of the grand division of labor, which is the market. And as soon as someone is doing a task, others no longer have to do it, at least to that extent. That is very helpful in all aspects. So open source entrepreneurship, I would say, is very much based on the same ideology.
Yeah, I actually, when I first came to this community, I was kind of wondering what I have to offer, because I'm not a technical, I'm not a coder. really like in the slightest amount. What I do, I teach in a Jewish day school in the days, and then I do web design in the evenings and the afternoons. So I know basic aspects of HTML and CSS and a little bit of JavaScript, but really, so I was wondering, like, what can I? So I do a little bit of video editing things, and I started making a few tutorials. I got a lot of help from Pierre Richard with setting up the node launcher, and so I tried to set up tutorials and work on that. But I actually, a crazy thing last week, just an idea popped into my head out of nowhere. I've got some kids, and I always, talk to them about Bitcoin and stuff, and they, I don't know how much they really understand it. And I thought, I want to write a book for them, and not just for them, but for adults also. So I put out, and I said, does anyone, have you seen any, Bitcoin books for kids or explainers? And there's a lot of like baby books, kid books, but nothing that I was really looking for. What I wanted was a kid's version of the Bitcoin Standard by Saifuddin Ammous. And he replied to me, and he was like, sounds like a good idea. And nobody else had anything. So I sat down that night, and I was like, I'm going to make this book happen. And I brainstormed on it, and then the idea, it just, like, I kind of went to sleep and thought about it, got up the next day, and the whole book came out in like a 3-hour sitting. Just like it came onto the, from my head into the keyboard and onto the page. So that's what I've been working on for the past week. I just tweeted out, I got an illustrator to work on the cover, and is going to be working on the illustrations. But I'm hoping that this is going to be a fun thing. So people already said that they want to work on the translation. So I'm probably going to be putting the text out there so that it can be put into, I hope that anybody can read it like that. I really want it for everyone. It looks like a kid's book, but it's actually really, I mean, you read a first draft. So it's really for anybody who doesn't quite understand why Bitcoin, what's this money about?
Yeah, right. When you emailed me and with the PDF document of this great book, or the first draft, and you were like, "Oh, this is a kid story about Bitcoin," and I was like, "Oh, cool! Like a jolly little example or explanation of how Bitcoin, or why Bitcoin is important, and maybe how it can be used." Right. But then I read this, and it turns out to be like a really in-depth crash course on the economics and ethics behind Bitcoin, and why it is important. And it's explained, like it's a lot of high quality information and knowledge, and that is conveyed very intuitively, with easy examples of just children playing and exchanging their goods and services. And I really think that you hit it home here, with covering a lot of crazy in-depth topics that you could discuss hours over, for every single one of them. But then you distill it in a very accessible and approachable form. So I think that is awesome. And here in about 30 pages, you really hit it home. Why Bitcoin? So yeah, just talk a bit more about that process of distilling it and getting to it in such a condensed way.
Well, thank you for being one of the first readers, and it's gone through a lot of drafts since I sent it to you. So even when it gets published, it might have a few new points that you haven't seen. I have one of my books that I really enjoy is. He might not be so happy to know that he inspired this, but Peter Schiff has a book called How an Economy Grows and Why It Crashes. Have you read that or seen that?
No,
so it's very cute. It's written it's written for adults. It's like 250 pages, but it is a comic book. I think his father wrote it first, and it goes through lots of aspects of the economy. It's much more details of it goes through history, and it plays characters actually, like going, and it tries to explain Austrian economics and gold versus fiat. It uses fish. Somehow explains that the fish they have there are sturdy and limited in supply, and it takes effort and energy to fish them. So they, he creates this whole world. And I really liked that book. I've had it for years, and I think that it does a good explaining of Austrian economics, but then it leaves you kind of at the end where you're stuck, where where we are now. For people who are gold and silver bugs, like we were stuck with fiat. There wasn't so much of a direction forward, and then with Bitcoin, it takes it to the next level, and it's like, well, we actually have a solution, and we can get ourselves out of this fiat problem if we move over to Bitcoin. So that was one of the inspirations, and obviously from the Saifuddin's book, The Bitcoin Standard, which I've read a handful of times, not quite cover to cover, but pretty. I've got it on my shelf. It's very close by whenever I need to take a look at it. And I condensed all of these ideas into my Bitcoin and Judaism presentation. So I went through, through barter, through what are they called? Primitive forms of money, shells and all of this. It's also somewhat inspired from Nick Szabo's Shelling Out essay about where money comes from and how it develops. And I just tried to make it as simple as possible. I've got a few kids, and my wife is a professional editor for her work, and we went through it together and tried to really condense it down and make it simple. So a lot of eyes have seen it, and I'm really thankful to a lot of people. And I'm hoping that it's something. What I'm hoping is that this book will be something that you can that a Bitcoiner will buy and read for the kids, and then also give to their no coiner friend who just doesn't understand why you're so obsessed and interested in this money. Like, what's the big deal? Why isn't my credit card just as good as your Bitcoin? Like, sometimes the price goes up and sometimes the price goes down. Why do you care so much? And it's because it's just has this something totally new that wasn't offered before. And so that's what I'm hoping that people of all ages can kind of take this, the question of this limited resource. And actually, I took a few lines, or didn't take, but it was inspired by a podcast that I heard a couple weeks ago from with Marty Bent, and he had on Misir Mahmudov. And did you happen to catch that one? And he was talking about, that time is our limited resource and how precious it is. And when you convert your time into money, you need to make sure that money is precious and limited also. And that was a very powerful, it was a great podcast. So that like was going through my head, and I was like, I want to put this in words. And so that's what I've got now. So we've got the whole book written, and it's being illustrated very beautifully. It's going to be in color and everything. So I'll make sure to send one out when we've got it in print, hopefully like a month or so.
Oh, that is awesome, right? And I really like about this idea is both that you do cover this in the book itself, that the importance of applying yourself and helping others through entrepreneurship, right? And that is great in your story, but it's great that you yourself are applying yourself and doing this entrepreneurial task of coming up with the creative idea of this book, condensing it down into like a nice and compelling story, and then taking your capital and sacrificing not just, of course, your money, your precious sats, but also, of course, your time and attention to then go and publish this book and print it. And
don't worry. Because of Gresham's law, I'm only releasing my fiat. I'm hoping not to release any sats for the printing of this book.
Well, the main question is, why are you still holding on to fiat? I haven't quite figured out how to do all of my. Listen, if you go on Twitter, all the big Bitcoiners say to use a credit card. So that's what I'm. That's It's horrible advice. Never use a credit card. Never.
Well, no, but you know what I've been using recently that I really loved? Have you tried out? Well, if you don't use fiat, you probably haven't been able to do it. But try Lolly. Did you see this?
Yes, I saw. Give us a short summary of what it does, Lolly.
So basically, it's Ebates but for Bitcoin. So you sign up for it, and then what it is, it's an affiliate link but they may that you can either just go through the website and use their affiliate with your account, or you can use their browser extension, which automatically adds the affiliate link. And then when you do purchases for, I think they have like 700 stores, it gives you, they get a kickback for the affiliate link, and then they give you a kickback from their kickback. So some of them are like, some of them go up to like 9%. Like, I don't know, it was Groupon or something like that. And some of them are like 1, 2, 3%. So if you're using a credit card, which gets you, 2 or 3%, and then you're using that, which gets you a couple percent, and you're getting it paid in sats, in Satoshis that you can redeem and bring back to your, hold in your own wallet and keep your own keys. So it's it's a like a no-brainer. So I switched, I had an Ebates account, but I'm switched everything over to use Trilolly now. I mean, any way you can to stack sats, whether it's the Cash App or if it's this.
Oh, and he's gone. But yeah, I think Lolly is a good idea in a sense that it makes markets more efficient, right? And it brings together supply and demand, and there's a financial incentive to do that, right? And that again is the business model here of Lolly of taking a cut from both sides, or as well, especially from the merchant side. And that kind of takes a cut from the customer as well. But of course, this means that you get back some of these efficiencies that Lolly creates by bringing together the market participants. And that inherently is a great task, and I would say very worthy. Though I would caution that these funds are tied to your personal identity. Right, they are connected, and they do unfortunately, light KYC.
It's light. It's not full KYC. I mean, it's not like you're not going. I doubt you're going to be getting huge amounts of sats like if you were buying from an exchange. So they don't. It's not like a social or credit card or even address. I don't believe. I think it's just name and email. Address is the only thing that you need. But yeah, I mean, it's probably I don't know if it's associated with your credit card, but I mean, the fact is, I live in New York, and so pretty much every way of getting sats is going through some type of KYC. So it's not any different than, for me at least, it's less KYC than every other means I have of stacking sats. So that it's, for my case, I'm aware of the concern, and it's actually better or lighter privacy concern than the other methods I have.
Yeah, great point, right? It is not as much KYC, and especially with a very light onboarding process. I'm not sure, but I think it's just email and full name.
Yeah.
Right.
And they seem like they're real Bitcoiners. I like working with companies that are Bitcoiners. That's the kind of people that I want to be, involved in, because I said, something about their ethos, something about maybe even their morality, you could say, if they're, if they understand and they get Bitcoin, that's the kind of people I want to do business with.
Oh yeah, very much so, right? It is the agora, the marketplace that is only inhabited by free, peaceful individuals who voluntarily trade with each other and help each other and sacrifice together, right? So that absolutely. But and right, as you said, it's not a large amount, and all you need to be is cautious and know that these people know that these are your Satoshis and that they can follow them on the blockchain. So make sure that if it is a larger amount, to do some form of coin joins, or maybe open a Lightning channel. You have much more privacy in that Lightning channel. But again, so it really depends, and you need to be cautious, and you need to be aware of the trade-offs. But as you said, the trade-offs might be very justified to use this service, which again I do think is very valuable. So we do have another question here asked by Thomas Hunt, Mad Bitcoins, in the chat. And he asks, and I'll quote, how can we explain to the people that caring for others is not socialism in itself? So could you draw the line here between coerced socialism and the types of donation and sharing with others that you propose?
Well, are you with me there? I just changed my Wi-Fi, so I'm hopefully on a better connection now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's the exact opposite. Giving charity is voluntary, and it's also when I believe that it's Milton Friedman explained that there are a few different ways that money can be spent. When one person spends money, their own money, for a reason that they choose the wisest investment possible. When somebody else spends somebody else's money for somebody else, they are the most reckless with their decisions. So from an efficiency standpoint, it is going from the most efficient means of transaction to the least efficient means of transaction when it's a charity that's performed by the individual versus charity that's performed by somebody else, like potentially by the state. So that is, I just think, from that standpoint alone, is enough to be enough of a difference. But the core issue with socialism isn't that working together as a community is a bad thing. It's the forced aspect of it, and particularly the overreach of it. Even if somebody is a minarchist and they would argue in some narrow points a state is useful, which I know that you could argue on both sides, but I'll argue that in some points a state is a beneficial or a necessary thing. But it wouldn't be in this. It wouldn't be in. It would be much better to have it done that individuals and then you could have competition also. And that a person who has this moral stance and knows that they need to help other people can decide where their charitable dollars are spent. And even let's put it at a much milder form, like that even a statist would appreciate. That if you want to give, you have to give a certain amount of money, but you get to pick where it goes. Instead of having it just go to some faraway city where they decided. So it's the complete opposite of wanting to help people and wanting to give from yourself and sacrifice to help other people is totally the opposite and has the opposite effect of what socialism is. I just saw somebody tweeted out, was it you? It might have been you or somebody else tweeted, what did socialists use before for light before fire? Electricity. That when you have the inefficiencies of the state, it messes everything up. People want it, and so this is what everybody needs to. If they don't want less and less of the state, they have to be thinking more and more about their own personal responsibility, and that means to themselves, but it also means to their fellow man.
Yeah, very much so, right? And it's the aspect of individual preference scales that only you know what you marginally prefer. And you can only demonstrate and prove that in human action, right? In applying yourself in the agora, in the marketplace of free individuals, then sharing and exchanging goods and services with each other. And especially here, the gifting part. Again, we prove that it is mutually beneficial by acting it out voluntarily. And thus it is a very powerful effect here. However, then further, as you said, it's much more efficient as well, because we know it's mutually beneficial and we are willing to sacrifice on our own accord. We know that the sacrifice is worth it, or at least we will sooner find out when it is not worth it. And that is here with a voluntary market society very much, not guaranteed, but at least more properly presumed. We have
we know it's also not guaranteed in a state system either. It's not guaranteed, but we try the best that we can. That's the
exactly right. And again, here the peaceful society being built very much on sound morals that we do not break for some utilitarian reason. Right? It's not it's okay to steal from others if we then go and feed the children. A libertarian society here would say it is never right to steal something, regardless what you do with it afterwards. And the giving has to come from the heart. Otherwise, it's not a just giving.
Yeah, it's a very good point, and hopefully that's what people will. I think that it will. That the more people get that in their minds, the more moral we are, the better. The less state will need, and the better. The more productive we'll be.
Yes, agreed, very much. Okay, Michael, that was a great conversation. We really did cover quite a lot of topics. Do you have anything that we maybe have not yet touched upon, or something that you want to elaborate a bit further?
Well, you had mentioned that you are interested, or you had studied a little bit of Kabbalah, and Kabbalah means the mystical teachings of Judaism. Judaism has ethical teachings, legal teachings, but also there is some mystical aspects. And I did a little research into money, and there's so if a little bit about that. What the mystical concept of money is, that money is actually, in the physical sense, you could say it's the most primordial, most base entity that we have, because, or as humans, this is from a human perspective, because it's the foundation of all that we have. It's the foundation of our lives, and so because of that, it is this so powerful in a spiritual sense. It comes from an extremely high, powerful level in the Kabbalistic spiritual world, because it comes down and it involves itself with everything. In order to do that, it has this. So that kind of maybe explains why it does all of money in all forms, drives people crazy, and runs all of these things, and does it. And even when Bitcoiners, they found this new type of money, people don't just it's not like a hobby like people like sports. Bitcoin really becomes, I mean, even for me, such a huge part of what I'm interested in, which is strange. I wouldn't have ever thought that. I read economics before, and gold and things, but it didn't become my whole life. But actually, I've got to close up because my 1-year-old just woke up from his nap. So it's been wonderful speaking to you, Max. Thank you so much for having me on.
Oh, well, that is awesome, Michael. I'll let you get to the family, and you can simply hang up there in the top right. So again, thank you very much, and for calling here in and for joining the conversation. That was awesome.
Yeah, I look forward to talking to you again.
Well, for sure, absolutely. You're always welcome back on the WCN. And I'll link all your Twitter stuff now just at the end of the episode. So thank you very much for joining, Michael.
Have a great day. Take care.
You too. So, Piers, what do you think of all that, right? That was, I hope, a valuable and fun show talking about the aspects of Judaism and Bitcoin. And I think here, Michael, the Bitcoin Rabbi on Twitter, really knows what's up here. And he's found this edge effect of both the well, as you said, all the mythical and the legal and the spiritual teachings here that Judaism can bring or can offer, and how we as Bitcoiners might incorporate some of that tradition, which again has been condensed and distilled over centuries. So it is probably worth listening to such powerful ideas, and again accumulating this knowledge and trying to understand it and how it applies in your life. So again, I think that these, let's say, spiritual aspects or mystic aspects are very important. And Bitcoin, yes, is new and novel and awesome, and we can build awesome stuff with it as a new technology. But this doesn't mean that all ancient teachings are wrong. Quite on the contrary, actually, right? The Lindy effect, something that has been taught for several centuries, probably has some justification on being taught. So that's kind of my stand on this all. Okay, Piers, so going here through all this, the conversation here was with the Bitcoin Rabbi, here at the Bitcoin Rabbi on Twitter, a Torah maximalist. Oh God, so toxic. And he tweets awesome stuff about Bitcoin and Judaism. Very worth. Again, you probably realized during this conversation that he is worth listening to. He also has a great website here where he summarizes all the teachings here that he's talked about and links to all his tweets and videos and all the stuff. Please also check out his great talk here, 45 minutes, to some Jewish students about Bitcoin and Judaism. And here he applies especially the monetary, economical aspects, which I know my listeners will absolutely treasure and value. So definitely here worth checking out. And here is also the companion tweet storm by him that just condenses down on a couple more on these aspects of monetary economics in Judaism and how it can be applied. So again, follow him on Twitter. Really worth it. And also something that I think is very interesting, how Judaism and especially the study of the Torah very much is in line with having and running your own fully validating and archiving node. So really make you yourself declaring exactly which monetary rules you're going to use and then enforcing that on the network by running the equivalent software. That is something very, very powerful. And here again, both aspects of understanding and reading the Torah and understanding the laws and the teachings that are implied with it is a prerequisite here of being a good rabbi. And that would be the case here with Bitcoin, right? Having a full understanding of the software, or at least of using the software to its fullest extent. In that sense, that you can run your own full node and making your own rules and verifying consensus. So that is very much a cool edge effect that I would not have thought about. And then, of course, his awesome book, Bitcoin Money, A Tale of Bitville, Discovering Good Money. It's a nice, I think children's story is a bit of an understatement, but a really cool allegorical teaching of why Bitcoin is important and how free individuals discover it on the free market. I've read it already. I got the sneak preview. I was in the pre-sale Telegram group. We will pamp the ICO now. But definitely, I can highly suggest, so stay tuned here and maybe consider then getting this about 30-page full color print book in just 2 weeks, very soon. So Piers, thank you very much here again for joining me here on the World Crypto Network and for listening to our conversation with the Bitcoin Rabbi. If you want to know more, towardsliberty.com is the place to go for all the information that I produce and a good archive of Bitcoin and Austrian economics. And just chilling, a couple of good events coming up that you can find that I will be attending or speaking at. That is Understanding Bitcoin. April 5th till 7 in 2019. A great Bitcoin-only conference with a lot of awesome Bitcoiners and protocol developers in Malta. So that's going to be sunny, hopefully. At the same time, CoinFest in the UK, which unfortunately I could not attend because of some stupid misscheduling on my part, because it lines up here exactly on the same time frame. But CoinFest, the entire WCN crew will be there. Mad Bitcoins and Dave, the Crypto Raptor, and BTC Ben Socialist. So there's a bunch of cool people going to be there, and the entire Bitcoin powwow crew. So definitely CoinFest, very recommend as well. And the Boltathon, also on April 5th till 7th. So 3 conferences at the same weekend. Crazy times. And that was especially here about a virtual university, a virtual conference where different peers can do a presentation and talk about whatever they want to talk about. So we have here speakers like Rusty Russell, Alex Rothbard, Pierre Richard, Lightning Koala, Fabric Durian, Connor Fromknecht, Britt Kelly, Rockstar Dev, and many more. So that is really awesome. And we also have, if I can find it, I think probably speakers. It might be, or not. Sessions, exactly. Here we can actually see that there is also a way where you can vote with Lightning Network payments on who should be the next speaker. Oh, and guess what? I'm number 1 right here with almost 200,000 Satoshis being donated here to the vote. So that is awesome. Talking about the economics of Lightning Network. So if you want to first make sure that that this topic will be included in this conference, you can vote right here with your Satoshis. And then you can purchase a ticket and register for this event. And it will be, I think, a Zoom meeting, but definitely like some virtual cyberspace room. So that is an awesome event. And just a couple here of the most recent conferences that you should probably go to. Of course, as usual, also here's the Tallycoin. If you like the free content that we produce here in this Libre open source archive of knowledge that is the World Crypto Network, we very much appreciate the couple shekels. Give a half shekel and be a good Judean believer, and give here the half shekel to build even further the archive of the World Crypto Network. And of course, same goes for Mad Bitcoin's fundraisers here. He has produced a bunch of good content. So get him first. You need to fill up the fundraiser to get him out of the EU because he's still stuck there since last time. But then he also needs to get back into the EU, into Britain, here for CoinFest. So 2 fundraisers for Mad Bitcoins. Okay, anything more happening in the chat? He bought the book in a pre-sale. Yes. Marcus Aurelius, definitely, absolutely, also a philosopher worth looking into. Like and donate, and I would say subscribe to the World Crypto Network. And Piers, that was pretty much it for today. Thank you very much, as usual, for joining me here, and see you on the next show. Bye-bye.